Good morning, everyone. Welcome. How's everyone doing? Good? Yes? How was the opening session? Is it good? Yeah, well, you kind of have to say it's good because we have Michael with us for this session. No. So you all know Michael. He's part of the product management team. My name is Seth. I'm part of the product marketing team. And really, this session is, you could say, a continuation or an extension of what was talked about on main stage, really focusing around some of the automation use cases with Dynatrace. But I also want to spend some time talking about how you can bring a culture of automation within your organization and driving towards that automation center of excellence. So before we get into the presentation, I wanted to take us down memory lane. Right? So let's transport ourselves maybe 7, 8, 9 years ago, if we have a time machine, or a DevOps time machine, right, to an era before we had widespread automation. Okay? So you wake up in the morning, right? You have your cup of coffee, you're really excited because today is release day. You've been working, you and your team have been working towards this day for many, many months, maybe 6 months, maybe the whole year, right? So there is an air of anticipation. You head to the office, you open the door, you look on the right, and you see a bunch of folks hunched over in the server room. They're manually configuring servers because there appears to be some issue. You let it go, you let it pass, and you continue walking towards your office. You open your office door, and you look to the right, or to the left, and you see your developer colleagues in a huddle, and they have some concern on their face, and they're waving at you, telling you to come on in quickly. They're all looking for the latest version of code for their application. So suddenly, this air of anticipation has turned into frustration because now collaboration has become a challenge. Right? You now need to navigate through this complex web of approvals and manual processes. And you have to hope against hope that everything aligns up perfectly. So you and your team feel the pressure, right? The pressure is on. You need to deploy because your customers are expecting something big, right? Your competitors are lurching, and more importantly, Wall Street is circling. So what you had planned for the last 6 months has suddenly now turned into this high-stakes gamble. How many of you can identify or have lived this in the past, or maybe even living it today? Right? I see a few hands, I see a few nods. That is the world that we lived in. But fast forward to today, where automation is now the heartbeat of DevOps. Right? Continuous integration, continuous delivery, continuous monitoring, continuous testing, continuous deployment. Automation has become the heartbeat of DevOps today, and it has transformed the way developers, the way DevOps engineers, the way site reliability engineers, the way platform engineers do work. But it's not happened with just a snap of the finger, right? There has been a lot of investment in people, in process, in technology. In fact, according to a survey that we did, on average, $9.1 million of investment in automation across development, security, and operations. So when you think about automation, it is no more just an efficiency drive. It is starting to become a strategic imperative with that kind of money being invested. Right? So I want to start off by asking this question, right? How automated are we really today, from where we have come to where we're at? We were interested in this, and so we actually surveyed about 450 DevOps professionals across the globe, across varying industries and sizes, and it turns out we're just over halfway there. 56% of end-to-end DevOps processes are automated today. And what that means is we have a long way to go, in spite of all of the investments in people, process, and technology. Now, yes, you might be thinking this is an average. Where do I stand? And when we break it down by company size, you see the range from 45% to 67% based on the size of the organization. And this makes sense because unless you have automation, you cannot scale your organization. But if it is becoming a strategic imperative, how many of you, show of hands, can say that you have or you know of a clearly defined DevOps automation strategy within your organization? How many people? Very few hands. In fact, less than the 38% that the survey says. So only 38% have a clearly defined DevOps automation strategy. And this is in spite of the obvious benefits that automation brings, right? And if you look at it, the survey also brought out the usual suspects, right? Improvement in software quality, reduction in deployment failures, reduction in IT costs, and improvement in employee satisfaction and productivity. So the question is, if there are these obvious benefits, then what is stopping us? What is holding us back from investing in more automation use cases? And it turns out that the top three, the first one was around security. And to me, this is actually a little bit of a fallacy where you think that the more the manual process, the more exposure or the more risk, the higher risk it has. And so if you actually invest in automation, you should be more secure. The second one was around data operationalization. So this was actually touched upon main stage yesterday around how do you actually confidently rely on the data that you have to use it for automation? How do you make sure you overcome challenges in data silos, in data complexity, in data lacking the context, right? Data operationalization, how are you thinking about it? How are you addressing a lot of these challenges within your organization so that it can then be used for automation perspective? And then the final one, or not the final, but the third highest one was toolchain complexity. So we talked about this today morning, right? As you have development teams and DevOps teams in your organization building up their tool chains to address certain, to deliver that high quality software faster, it's being developed in silos. And suddenly you have different teams with their own tool stacks, and that is now leading to this tool chain complexity or tool sprawl. And so the question is, how do you actually rationalize your tool chain? And well, platform engineering that we talked about in the morning is often an answer to that. So while there are barriers, the question then becomes, how can we help, right? How can Dynatrace at least help you address some of these challenges? And observability, I think Rick said it, right? It is no more becoming mandatory, it is mandatory, right? Observability is a critical prerequisite to automation. And again, some of the stats back it up, right? 86% of organizations say that observability will play a vital role, and 71% are actually using observability data to drive automation within their DevOps. And so some of the use cases that they're doing are around remediation, right? If you understand the problem, if you detect it automatically, well, the next step is why not actually automatically go ahead and remediate it. Automating release validation. So when you think about quality and security gating, you think about your QA process overall, how can you actually automate it so you don't have someone looking through multiple dashboards and actually just verifying whether the tests have passed and met the quality criteria. And then overall, just improving DevOps workflows and eliminating these bottlenecks. So that kind of now brings us back to what Michael presented on main stage. Automation is critical. Right? Automation is required to scale. Let's now dive into how Dynatrace can address some of these specific automation use cases. Michael?
Perfect. Thank you, Zeph. So I don't know if anyone's seen it on the many numbers that we showed. There was 38% have a formalized DevOps strategy, right?
Yep.
38%, it's like a little bit more than a third, but still almost 80% use observability already for DevOps automation. And I think that might be weird at the beginning, but actually, this really emphasizes again what we discussed on main stage just earlier, that it's a pick and choose situation. You don't necessarily need to have a fully fleshed out strategy. If you see use cases that are of value, you can adopt them easily, right? So let's spend some more time on this use case list that you see here. A lot of these use cases have automation at its core, and I hope that's why you're all here in this room right now. And even the ones that don't cover automation can achieve even so much more value by adding automation on top. So if you look, for example, at the AI cost management that we see here in the bottom row, fourth from the left, in the next minutes, I want to focus on automation use cases specifically, and specifically those that we haven't heard on main stage yet. So when we have a look, maybe a demo would have been easier than slides. Oh, no, it's my fault, sorry. User error, I pressed the wrong button. I'm used to seeing big buttons in front of main stage, so that's why these little buttons, I don't know. Anyways, my fault, sorry. Good. We see here now which use cases actually have automation at its core. And I'm going to focus on the first few on the left here. And if you look at those 5 use cases, progressive delivery, continuous testing validation, release validation, AI model validation, and behavior validation, what do they have in common? Yes, cool. Perfect. Workflows, right? Workflow automation. So based on any event, so whether that being an event from Davis or an externally ingested event, business event, lifecycle event, etc., we can automatically trigger a workflow. What's the second one that they have all in common? That's now a little bit more tricky than automation. Does anyone know? It's the Site Reliability Guardian. And with the Site Reliability Guardian, we are able to validate any telemetry data. So metrics, traces, logs, events, SLOs, but also security information, so vulnerabilities, right? And with this, we validate them against static and auto-adaptive thresholds. How this looks like is when we look at quality and security gates. In this case, we do a security gate. We validate the health of components across vulnerability data available in Dynatrace. We then ensure that no new vulnerabilities are introduced into production. And then, based on that, in the background, we can have a workflow that can do whatever you want it to do, right? So that's the automated validation first, but then triaging, remediation, rolling out, rolling back, etc. I want to mention one use case that I found quite interesting is AI model validation. So our research team uses the Site Reliability Guardian to validate new AI models and compare them. And they define their objectives not based on SLOs, but what they actually do is they define their criteria with DQL. So they look at the data that they ingest, they set their static thresholds. What's also coming that I want to mention here is auto-adaptive thresholds for baselining are coming soon as well. So you can use both thresholds as you see fit. At the same time, you have static thresholds with hard limits, hard borders, and the auto-adaptive threshold can be used to make sure you don't have a creeping deterioration of your service quality. So if you normally have like a failure rate of 2, whatever, right? And suddenly it's 20, you still want to do something even though it might still be in your static thresholds. That's all done automatically by Davis AI. And from here then, we can automate on top of it. So what our research team is doing on the Davis AI models is they then use this automatically to update which AI models provide the best probabilities and best coverage. With that, they are able to automate hundreds of AI models at the same time, all automatically. Another use case that I want to briefly cover is the SRE Autopilot. The SRE Autopilot is used by our SRE team, and I had to remove some of the data because it's from our production environment. But what they do here is they proactively see when disk alerts are potentially going to be triggered. So we use predictive Davis AI to estimate when we have an issue with a disk. We get the forecast, we get the sizing recommendation, and in the background, depending on what we have here, we automatically resize the disks. And with that, we resize more than 17,700 disks in production alone. Another use case that I know I'm going pretty fast. Sorry about that. Something else that we're having is security as a service. What it pretty much does is it provides us the capability to provide meaningful, context-rich information about vulnerabilities to the security teams, but also to the respective development owners. So we trigger on an issue, in this case a vulnerability. We get additional metadata, log files, ownership information, and then we send the information to the teams. In this case, it's an email, it could be Slack, Teams, whatever, you name it, right? And that's just the first step, because obviously it already helps us a lot to cut triaging time, but we don't use this workflow like you see it here. We do more stuff. So what we do is we do incident auto-routing. So instead of just notifying the correct team, we flag it for action. So we create a Jira ticket for them, which is assigned to the responsible development team. So it's not thousands of Jira tickets for the same vulnerability assigned to no one over and over again. We bring that down, we deduplicate and make sure that we have just single security tickets per vulnerability per development team. And this helps us a lot to really make sure we focus and prioritize where we want to be. The next topic that I want to go into is problem remediation. We've been talking about problem remediation a lot. We heard a little bit about auto-healing on main stage, but I still want to go into this a little bit. We have here a problem remediation where we trigger Ansible. So Red Hat is one of our strategic partners, and whatever the Ansible product team does, we will be compatible with that, right? So if it's Ansible AWX, Ansible Tower, Ansible Automation Platform, Event-Driven Automation, whatever names they use, we will be compatible with that. What we do here is, again, we have a problem notification from Davis. We get the stakeholders, who is responsible for it, who is the owner, who's responsible for development, who's responsible for line of business, security, operations. And depending on these responsibilities, we inform them and check if there are already existing tickets in Jira. From here then, we create or update a ticket, again, making sure we don't duplicate tickets. We launch the remediation on Ansible side. We validate the remediation, so bringing us into this closed loop feedback, where whatever happened on the Ansible side, we ensure with synthetic checks, with DQL observability and security data, that the remediation was successful, and then we update the stakeholders. This also includes advancing tickets, reopening tickets, or further escalating. And of course, Ansible is one of the execution planes that we use, and as Bonifaz has already mentioned on main stage just earlier, is that we are soon going to release several very exciting workflow actions around Kubernetes, around pull requests, around Git. So you will have access to powerful Kubernetes and Git workflow actions directly in the Dynatrace automation engine. Meaning you can do restarts, but also size your cloud-native environments directly with Dynatrace. So briefly wrapping up, I want to highlight again that we've just released the observability guide to platform engineering. It is in our documentation. We are continuously updating it. We're really looking, and I've mentioned that before already, but we're really looking for your feedback. So tell us which use cases you would like to see. Tell us which use cases are difficult to adopt, so we can make sure we bring more Dynatrace experience to you and make it even better. And also tell us which use cases you would like to see from us that we don't even think about maybe. Like AI model validation, I was not aware of that until 2 weeks ago, that we do that. Lost the train of thought? Yes, make sure to go back to main stage in the afternoon, because we will talk more about use cases and how to adopt them, and it won't be duplicates to what you've seen in this breakout session. So still go to main stage in the afternoon, right? With that, can you tie all of these internal adoption and what we do at Dynatrace a little bit back to the customer stories again?
Absolutely.
Perfect, thank you.
Before I do that, I just want to quickly say, like, this is, again, just scratching the surface, right? I think when Bernd announced this last Perform, he said you can automate a near infinite number of use cases, and that is actually true. So what we would love is for you guys to start exploring workflows, start building automation use cases, and then share that back with us. We have something called the Automation Guild, where we have it's from customers to customers. We'd love to learn from you and see how you guys are using automation workflows with the Site Reliability Guardian to automate use cases at your organization. So I started off this presentation by asking the question, how automated are we? But I really want to end with asking the question, how automated are you, right? And when you're thinking about your respective organizations, do you really know your benchmark? Do you really know where you're at today in terms of how automated you are? And we kind of started this journey over a year ago, where we asked a lot of questions internally to our development team as well as externally. And based on all of the data that we got, we actually formed a maturity model, which has 4 stages, from foundational automation all the way to intelligent automation, where you're using AI heavily to do some of these automation use cases, across 4 different categories: your development and delivery, which is your dev, your ops, operations, and your security. But also the 4th one, which we found out was actually the most important one, is governance. And I don't know if you remember, but Marcio, when he presented from Dell earlier today morning, he actually had governance written on one of his slides, being super critical. So what we did is we actually created an assessment, which we will share the link with you shortly, where you can actually self-assess. So it's about 24 questions across these 4 categories. It's available online. You can self-assess, and you get a rating across these 4 categories: foundational, standardized, advanced, intelligent, for each of the 4 different areas, DevSecOps, and governance. And I actually had the pleasure to do this with a number of customers over the past couple of months. And I wanted to quickly share some of the takeaways from this workshop type setting that we did with these customers. So the first one was, as they completed the questionnaire and got the results, clearly identified process optimization opportunities. So as you're answering the questions, a lot of times you say, well, we do this manually. Well, we're doing this part manually. We need to automate here. Yes, we need to do this. Number 2, enhanced tooling strategy. And I kind of addressed this before. When you have stakeholders from dev, sec, and ops together in one room, it's really interesting to see that sometimes you're using 2 different tools to solve the exact same problem. You just didn't know about it because different teams, different budgets, different approvals. The third was this measurement mindset. And Marcio addressed this as well, right? If you build something, you want to measure it. And a lot of times when you're investing in tooling or doing certain things to improve, you're not actually measuring how much it has improved or what's the ROI from it. And that often, if you do measure it, if you do track it, you can maybe ask for some more budget because you have the data to show for it. And the 4th one, well, this is a little self-serving. This was, after all, Dynatrace customers. It was around how they can maximize their value of their Dynatrace investment. So they've invested in Dynatrace. They're using Dynatrace. A lot of times they didn't know that Dynatrace can do certain capabilities. We then show them how we can do certain things in a demo environment, and that kind of opens their eyes. So if you're a Dynatrace customer, these workshops may be valuable to you. All right, so last slide. If you're interested in the assessment, again, as I said, it's available online. My recommendation is do it together with your dev, sec, and ops stakeholders. You get better answers. But it is available, again, online, free for everyone to do. We also put a link to the report. So we shared a lot of statistics earlier. There's a lot more cool statistics from the report. So feel free to download the report. I have 40 seconds for questions. Thank you for joining us. But I think there's 2 mics at the back. So if you have any more questions, feel free to ask us.
So when you're sharing automation maturity, you're showing it from one perspective. But when you say how much workload you have already automated, how do you measure that? Because every year you're going to get new work.
Yeah.
And there's always going to be a perpetual flow of work. How can you say that I'm 38% automated or 40%?
Yes, so the question is how do you actually give the exact number, whether you're 38% or 40% automated? And so the survey actually went through a number of different processes. So there's about, I think, 15 to 20 different processes. So we looked at dev, CI, testing, release validation. So we asked about 20 different processes, and that's how we got the average. Yeah. So again, it's what you put in, right? It's like, how, are you highly automated, somewhat automated, not automated, or those were the scales, and then that's how we got the results. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Wait, can I go back? I think I've lost control. Can I go back to the previous slide?
The QR codes?
The QR codes, yep.
Yeah, 1 second. Otherwise, you can always
But you
reach
could
out
also
to us
just
as well.
Google DevOps Automation Assessment Dynatrace, and you should be able to find it from there. There you go. Any other questions? Otherwise, we'll be hanging around. You can always come by and say hello. All right, thank you.
Thank you.